Rolls-Royce crafts some of the priciest cars globally. But get this, the guy who kicked off this $7 billion empire came from humble beginnings, grew up poor, and had almost no schooling. Would you believe Henry Royce kick-started his first $1 million venture with just 20 pounds in his pocket? How on earth did he pull that off? Let's find out. Frederick Henry Royce, born in 1863 in a place called Alwilton in England, was the youngest of 5 children. His parents, James and Mary, ran a flour mill, but his dad James wasn't very good at business, and the mill didn't make much money. So the Royce family struggled a lot. In 1867, they had to declare bankruptcy, and in search of a better life, they decided to move to London. When Henry was just a little 4-year-old boy, he started working on a farm to scare away birds, earning a few pennies each week. His father, James, found work at another flour mill, but the family still had a lot of debt. Life was very hard for the Royce family, and then, just when they thought things couldn't get any worse, a tragedy happened. When Henry was only 9 years old, his father passed away. This was not only very sad, but also made their money problems even more difficult. So instead of going to school, Henry had to work all the time. He sold newspapers and delivered telegrams for the post office, earning just a few pennies for each delivery. As a young teenager, he started learning about engineering at the Great Northern Railway Works. His aunt helped him with some money, and even though he didn't have much formal education, Henry was determined to learn. In his free time, he read books on algebra, French, and electrical engineering. But after 3 years, he had to stop because he didn't have enough money. So he stopped his apprenticeship and worked shortly at a toolmaking company in Leeds. After that, he got a job at the Electric Light and Power Company in London. In 1882, he moved again, this time to Liverpool, still working for the Electric Light and Power Company. His real dream was to make engineering his full-time job. But at 22 years old, he and his engineer friend, Ernest Claremont, decided to start their own business. They called it F.H. Royce and Company. Back then, Henry had only 20 pounds, and Ernest had just 50 pounds. They put together their small savings and started a business together, making electric fittings. They rented a place on 1A Cook Street in Manchester and lived in a single room above their shop. Money was tight, and they could hardly afford to eat, so they made sandwiches every day. The chances of success for 2 young men like them were very low. But instead of letting self-doubt get to them, Henry stuck to what he knew best: hard work. In everything he did, he made sure their product was better than what others offered. After a lot of trying things out, they finally created their first big hit, the electric doorbell. However, Henry's interest led him down a different path: motor cars. While Henry Royce played a big role in the Rolls-Royce story, there's another person we shouldn't forget, and that's Charles Stuart Rolls. It's where Royce and Rolls met that the brand's name was born. Born in 1877 in fancy Berkeley Square, London, Charles Royce was the youngest child of Lord and Lady Langaddock. His love for machines started early, and he studied mechanical engineering at Trinity College in Cambridge. Charles stood out for his engine tinkering and even got the nickname Dirty Rolls. During college, he did something unique. He traveled to Paris to buy a Peugeot Phaeton when cars were rare. After finishing studies in 1898, Charles worked on a steam yacht and at the London and Northwestern Railway. Yet his heart was set on cars, new projects, and sales. With his father's support, he opened one of Britain's earliest car dealerships in 1903, naming it C.S. Rolls & Co. For a couple of years, he focused on bringing and selling Peugeot and Minerva cars. His business thrived, and he used the money for his sports interests. Besides being a keen driver, pioneer, and racer, he was also into aviation. Unfortunately, Charles' lifelong passion would cost him more than just money. While running his company F.H. Royce & Company, Henry Royce developed a growing interest in cars. In 1901, he decided to improve a used DeKalb car that he'd bought. Wanting to do more, he decided to build a car from scratch, driven by a relentless pursuit of perfection and a determination to do better than the flawed DeKalb. As 1903 ended, Henry had crafted his first petrol engine. The next year, he proudly drove his first Royce 10-horsepower car through town. Almost 2 decades after starting his business, his debut car was a success, inspiring him to create more. Of the 3 cars he made, one went to his business partner, Ernest Claremont, and another was sold to a shareholder, Henry Edmunds. Fate intervened when Edmunds, a friend of both Rolls and Royce, praised Royce's cars to Rolls. At that time, Rolls faced frustrations in selling only imports. Edmund set up a meeting between Rolls and Royce, and in moments, Rolls fell in love with Royce's two-cylinder creation. After a test drive, Rolls agreed to sell as many cars as Royce could make. This meeting would shape the future of the automotive world. These two guys made an amazing team. Even though they were quite different in age and schooling, they fit together perfectly. At 41, Royce taught himself a lot and worked really hard to get by. On the flip side, Rolls, who was 26, had a fancy education at Trinity College and spent his younger years zooming around in his fancy cars. The big question was, could they find common ground? Surprisingly, even though Henry Royce and Charles Royce were very different, their teamwork was something special. They hit it big in the car world, and in 1906, they officially started the Rolls-Royce Company. Shortly after, they introduced the six-cylinder Silver Ghost, which became the top car globally in just a year. Pretty amazing, but they didn't do it all on their own. While Henry and Charles were busy making and selling cars, Charles's buddy, Claude Johnson, took charge as the managing director. Realizing how important it was to boost the company's image, Claude did some clever stunts to show off how quiet and reliable Rolls-Royce cars were. One ad even said the 40 to 50 horsepower motor car was not one of the best, but the best car in the world. It worked like magic, highlighting Rolls-Royce's great performance and sparking worldwide demand for their top-notch engineering. Claude was so key to the company's success that he got the nickname the hyphen in Rolls-Royce. Sure, marketing's cool, but quality is what really matters. Just like trying to use a banana as a phone won't get you far. People will think it's weird. Henry and Charles knew that they were all about giving top-notch quality. Henry was a workaholic, always working and rarely sitting down for a good meal. He had a license for hard work, not for a balanced diet. Surprisingly, despite his weird eating habits and not-so-healthy lifestyle, he outlived Charles by a couple of decades. I guess all that hard work kept him going. Now, Charles was a bit of a daredevil and loved aviation. He even tried to get Henry into flying, but Henry liked to stay on solid ground. Charles went all in and got himself a Wright Flyer aircraft, making over 200 flights with it. In 1910, he pulled off a non-stop double flight across the English Channel. But just a month later, his flying dreams came crashing down. During an airshow in Bournemouth, Charles had a fatal plane crash at just 32, becoming the first Brit to have a bit of a rough landing. This sad event marked the end of the short-lived Rolls-Royce partnership. Now, Henry had to carry on the legacy all by himself. Henry was a real hard worker, and his creative designs made Rolls-Royce famous for top-notch engineering and quality. He never settled for anything less than perfect. During World War I, the company expanded into making airplane engines, something Charles had asked for before. In the next few decades, Rolls-Royce did really well, but Henry's health was a different story. In 1993, he succumbed to digestive issues. Years of eating poorly and working too much finally caught up with him. He spent his last years kind of unwell, but that didn't stop him from doing what he loved. He kept going until the very end. In fact, he doodled his last drawing from his deathbed just a few hours before he passed away at 70. Today, Rolls-Royce is still a big name in the engineering world. So that's the story. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more updates. We'll catch you in the next one.